Hi, I'm Mike Eager from Marriage by God, and today we're going to answer the question, why is marriage important to God? But before we do that, we probably need to ask the question, is marriage important to you? There might be three different ways that you might answer that question. The first way to answer that question is marriage important to you? Well, it's not that important to me right now because I'm not in a serious relationship, and so I'm not really thinking about marriage. Or, it might be because right now I've got a lot of priorities other than a serious relationship, so I'm not really putting much time into that. The second way you might be thinking about marriage and answering that question, is marriage important to you? Well, you might have a lot of history, and it may not be such that marriage looked really good to you. For example, if your parents got divorced and you saw that there weren't very many marriages that lasted a lifetime, you may think that marriage isn't important. It's not important to have that piece of paper in a serious relationship because it doesn't last a lifetime. So the third way you might answer the question, is marriage important to you, is to look at what society is telling you about marriage. And society is influencing the way that you look at marriage. A lot of people look at marriage now. And maybe the whole concept of marriage has changed. The definition of marriage has changed for you, and so you don't honestly think that marriage, the traditional way to look at marriage, is the way to look at marriage. Well, today we're going to look at why marriage is important to God and why we believe God is important in marriage. And hopefully that'll give you some insights to help you in the way you answer that question, is marriage important to you? So the first question we'd like to address is, why is marriage important to God? When you look at the book of Genesis, God created the heavens and the earth. God created the birds and the animals, and he created man to reign over them. But soon after creating man, he says that man should not be alone. And so he creates the woman from the man, and he says that in Genesis 2:24, that for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and the two of them will become one flesh. In Mark 10:6-8, it says that God created man and woman to come together to join as one flesh, and that what God creates, let no man separate. But the world will tell you that you can get married, but if you have irreconcilable differences or basic incompatibilities, you should just get divorced and find somebody else. The problem is that we're all imperfect people. And so even if you go into another marriage, you're still going to be marrying two imperfect people. And once again, you probably find that there's incompatibilities. We truly believe in the Marriage by God curriculum that God has joined people together. And for that reason, he's built them to come together as one flesh. And when they come together in one flesh, let no man separate it. That's the difference that we want to try to share with you in kind of the idea that God has a plan for marriage that is beautiful and loving, and one that will build a marriage that will last a lifetime. So we like to use the illustration of a rope. If you look at a rope and you were to take it apart, there are actually 3 strands. If you had 2 strands, you could never keep them together. It's that third strand that really keeps the rope together. Just makes a strong rope. That's the same thing that we see in marriage. Marriage is truly the coming together of 2 people, but it's God that bonds them together with a glue that can keep them together forever. So that's an illustration that we like to use, and I think it's a great illustration. Another illustration is like 2 pieces of paper. If you glue them together, if you try to pull them apart, you kind of rip them and it damages the papers. That's what we see in marriage. If 2 people come together and then it ends in divorce, there's so much damage that occurs, both to the individuals, could be to the children. I mean, everybody is affected when there's a divorce. So the next question we'd like to answer is, why is God important in marriage? Now, have you ever rock climbed? In the movie Free Solo, Alex Honnold attempts to climb El Capitan in Yosemite without a rope. Now, most rock climbers use rope as a tether to protect them in case they were to slip and fall to their death. The most important part of that rope and tether is what they call an anchor. An anchor is a loop, a metal piece that is actually embedded into the rock that secures the rope and protects the climber so that if they were to slip and fall, it would save their life. Trusting in God is just like that. Can you say that you can totally trust in God? Can you hang on to that rope and trust in that rope when you slip and fall? Do you trust God that way? When something happens in your life and it feels like you're slipping and falling, can you say that you trust in God to hang on to you when you're falling? If the rock climber did not trust in the rope and the anchor, he would never even attempt to climb El Capitan. He has to have complete confidence in the anchor if he were to fall. Well, God is the same way. Do you totally trust Him when things aren't going right in your life? In Deuteronomy 11:8 it says, "The Lord Himself will be with you and go before you. He will never leave you or forsake you. Do not be afraid or discouraged." We need to make a decision to trust in God for all of our situation and all of our consequences, because we live in a fallen world. And just like the anchor that supports us when we're rock climbing, we can trust in God in every situation, that He will always be there. He will never leave us or forsake us. So this is especially true in marriage. At Marriage by God, we try to help the couples to understand that in marriage you'll have ups and downs. So when you're dating, you may not see any of the person's weaknesses. I mean, you think that everything is wonderful. But really, in real life, in marriage, there are going to be the ups and downs. There's going to be the disagreements, the misunderstandings. But that's where God comes. God is the one that you turn to fulfill all of your needs. Your spouse cannot fulfill every one of your needs. And so we try to help the couples understand that. He's the only one that can save us from the sins of the world. If we slip and fall, He's the one that will hang on to us and save us. Just like the anchor saves us from falling off the rock. If both individuals trust in God to fulfill their needs, then they can reconcile any of the disagreements that they have in their relationship. So the world would like to tell you that you're looking for someone who's compatible with you. But we are trying to explain and teach that really it's all about learning to live with our incompatibilities, because we're both imperfect people. And when two imperfect people come together, it's really difficult when you have disagreements. So that's one of the things that we try to help to explain, is that you're trying to live with our incompatibilities. Once you understand this, you can turn to the one that can completely satisfy all of your needs, and that's Jesus. So going into the relationship with the right expectations will help you to be successful in your marriage, and you'll have a great possibility of succeeding in marriage and in life. Two imperfect people come together. It takes unconditional love in order to get over any conflict. But how can you give unconditional love if you don't know what that is? You can only give unconditional love if you've received unconditional love. God gave us unconditional love when He died on the cross to forgive us of all of our sins. He even compares the love for His church to the love between a husband and a wife. In Ephesians 5:25, he says, "Husband, love your wives, just like Christ loved the church and gave His life to make her holy." So why might this be important to your relationship that might lead to marriage? Well, God says to love Him and then to love others. So marriage will be the primary relationship for you when you get married, and that's where you'll love another person. Just like I said, love God and love others. Well, the most important other is going to be your spouse in marriage. In the book Love Focus, it talks about God's love and how it should affect the way that we love God and love other people. In a survey, 93% of people, when asked the question, do you want to get married? 93% of people say that someday they would like to be married. So there's a lot of people out there that still believe in marriage. In fact, every year over 2 million people get married. That's a lot of people that still believe in marriage. Marriage is the closest relationship that two people will have with each other. So some of our biggest struggles once we get married is to keep marriage as our highest priority. There are so many things that distract us. We have children, we have work, all the different things that distract us. But one of the things that we try to emphasize in Marriage by God is that marriage should be the highest priority and the most important relationship. So we emphasize having fun together, making sure that you continue to have dates with your spouse, that continues to remain important. Because one of the most important gifts that you can give to your children is to have a strong marriage. Now, the Song of Solomon is a beautiful book, and it expresses the love that two couples have and the beauty that God created in marriage. I mean, it's a beautiful story of a husband and wife enjoying each other physically as they have consummated their marriage and they are loving each other. So what is the alternative to what God intended marriage to be? Unfortunately for some of you, you might have experienced broken marriages, divorce. Maybe your parents got divorced. And divorce is devastating to the couple, devastating to the children, devastating to family and friends. I mean, there's never anybody that benefits from it. No one ever plans to get married to end up in divorce. I mean, when someone gets married, they say, "Till death do us part." That's the idea about marriage, is to build a relationship that will last a lifetime, but it doesn't always happen. So many people have been affected by divorce. It can lead to financial devastation, psychological problems, even depression, all a result of a marriage that didn't last. So we believe that mentoring couples in God's plan for marriage is a great way to increase the success of marriage. In fact, statistics show that if a couple goes through a premarital program, they have a 30% better chance of having a successful marriage. So that's why we think it's really important. I hope you enjoyed this video today. I hope it gives you some insights to why God is important in marriage and why marriage is important to God. Bob and Judy Hughes, the authors of the book Love Focused, one in which I've read that book 25 times. We talk about the difference between needs and desires and how expectations are affected because we misconstrue that some desires are needs.